What is going on, everybody? It has been a while since we have been on the channel, but the NFL season is starting in less than 50 days, so I think it's about time that we start ranking all the positions and see where we are at going into 2024. So this is going to be really interesting. Of course, we are going to be starting with the quarterback position. So we got every starting quarterback in the NFL. I'm not sure who made this tier list, but the tiers are like super specific, so I've never seen anything like this. But we got elite, elevator, great game manager, bridge starter, and then you can read the rest. We got rookies, backups, high-end prospects. But it's going to be really interesting because there's a lot of unknowns going into next year. Just looking at the first two names that we see, Anthony Richardson, Aaron Rodgers, they barely played last year, so there's a lot of guys like that we really don't know too much about. And of course, the new rookies are going to be super interesting as well. And I'm not just going to slot all the rookies in the rookies tier because I feel like it would be more interesting to actually project how well they're going to do this year. But let's go ahead and get right into this, starting with the first name on the board, which is Anthony Richardson. Now, in the few games that Anthony Richardson did play last year, he was incredible. I mean, he showed flashes of being a really, really good quarterback, but obviously the injuries did get to him. I'm pretty sure he got a concussion, and then he also dislocated his shoulder, which is what caused him to miss the whole season. But based on what he showed us, he's really athletic. He's got a good arm. I think he definitely has high-end starter upside. I feel like he definitely has potential to go up here, like elite to elevator. He's definitely not a game manager or a bridge starter. He's definitely a franchise quarterback. He has that type of potential. I think he's perfect in this tier because his upside is really high. Next, we have Aaron Rodgers, and I think Aaron Rodgers is, at this point in his career, he's not he might be, you could consider him a bridge starter just because he's not going to be playing for many more years, but he's way too good, I think, to be considered that. I would still have to throw him in elevator. I'm not sure if he's still an elite quarterback, but of course the difference between Zach Wilson last year and Aaron Rodgers is going to be very distinct. Aaron Rodgers is going to be able to take that offense to new heights, hopefully, and hopefully he's actually going to be able to play this year. I think he's still an elevator, even this late in his career. Next up, we have Baker Mayfield. Baker Mayfield basically revived his career last year, but the question is he anything better than a game manager? Is he a true elevator? At this point, I'm not sure. I think he's got to go somewhere between these two tiers. But for now, I'm going to give Baker Mayfield his flowers. I'm going to put him in great game manager. After looking through some of the other quarterbacks, we'll see if we change that based on who else I put in this tier. The end of the season stretch with the Bucs is what led them to the playoffs, and he was a big reason for that. He was definitely the leader of the group. He did a great job. If he can do what he did last year for a few more years and continue to use his weapons really well and even make young guys look a lot better than they are, I think he could easily be an elevator, but we'll have to see if this one season was legit or if it was just a one-season thing. But I think he will be able to back it up next year. But of course, we'll just have to see. Next up is Brock Purdy. This one is interesting. Brock Purdy was an overtime away from winning the Super Bowl. Literally 1 point away from winning a Super Bowl. So, I mean, that being said, is he an elevator? I'm not sure. I think Brock Purdy's just a tier below a guy like Aaron Rodgers at this point. I think he is a great game manager. There's times where he's simply just a game manager, but when he's actually able to get the ball downfield and make good decisions, he is a great game manager. He wasn't amazing in the playoffs, but he was good enough to lead them to the Super Bowl. And in the Super Bowl, he did mostly everything right, just didn't make any incredible plays like Patrick Mahomes did, but we expect that out of Mahomes, and we don't expect that out of Brock Purdy. But that being said, he's still a great game manager. I think he's right up there with Baker Mayfield. I think they're very similar type of players. Relatively inconsistent. I think Baker Mayfield's definitely more talented. Baker Mayfield was the first overall pick in his draft. Brock Purdy was dead last, so that goes without saying. But at this point in time, I think they're both great game managers. Next up is Bryce Young. So a lot of people are off the Bryce Young hype train. I'm still not. The Panthers were the most dysfunctional organization last year. If you give him any other team, if you give him like the team that the Texans had around CJ Stroud, I think he would have been much better. Would he have been as good as CJ Stroud? Probably not. I don't think he ever will be, but I still think Bryce Young can be a decent quarterback in this league. I don't think he can go in the same tier as Anthony Richardson. I think his ceiling is definitely higher than just a low-end starter, which is why I wouldn't drop him into this tier. I think he definitely has upside to be a top 15 to 20 quarterback in the league. If his size is really the biggest thing, and once his decision making gets good, you never know. He could be a top 10 quarterback in the league, but right now the Panthers are just not in a good spot. We'll see if they do any better this year, but I'm not sure, man. That offensive line is still a question to me, and the weapons he has around him aren't that great still, but I think Bryce Young can still be really good in this league if the Panthers are able to develop and not be so dysfunctional. Next up, we got the first overall pick in this past year's draft, Caleb Williams. So he's one of the best quarterback prospects we've seen in a while. Obviously, he can't go in any of the top 5 tiers yet because we haven't even seen him play a single snap. So I feel like it's fair to put Caleb Williams in the tier with Anthony Richardson. Of course, we know Anthony Richardson has that potential. We haven't seen anything out of Caleb Williams in the league yet, but I definitely think he has high-end starter upside. He has good size, good arm, good mobility. He really has everything to be a great quarterback. It's just, can the Bears surround him with talent over the next few years? That's the real question to me, and we'll have to see about that. Next up is Dak Prescott, the quarterback of my favorite team in the NFL, the Dallas Cowboys. And, of course, I can't put him in the elevator tier. He elevates his players in the regular season, but what does that matter? If you can't do it in the playoffs, I just don't think it even matters that much. So we're going to go ahead and put him in great game manager. That goes without saying for me. I mean, he's had very talented teams around him, and it's really felt like there's been a few playoff losses that you could simply attribute to Dak Prescott not playing well. The Packers game was one of them. Of course, the defense was horrendous, but if he had played a little bit better, of course, I think they would have had a much better shot at winning that game. That's really all I have to say about Dak, though. We'll have to see what he does next year. Probably just another good regular season where he's like top 10 quarterback in the league and then he just falls off in the playoffs again. Next up is Derek Carr, and I think right now in his career, Derek Carr is like the definition of a bridge starter. He's probably not going to be a starting quarterback in the league for much longer. But for right now, on the New Orleans Saints, he's definitely not the long-term option. He's had a decent career so far, hasn't had much playoff success or even regular season success, but he's been all right. He's been basically a bridge starter his whole career, except with the Raiders. You could argue he was a decent game manager, but bridge starter for Derek Carr, that goes without saying. Next up, we got Daniel Jones. And just a few years ago, I was starting to come around to Daniel Jones. He was taking a underwhelming Giants team to the playoffs. Of course, the coaching was incredible, and it really looked like Daniel Jones was going to be at least around a decent quarterback. It looked like he would be at least like a top 15, 20 quarterback in the league for a few years. But right now, I think he's just a high-end backup to a low-end starter, probably one of the worst starting quarterbacks in the league, unfortunately. Next up, we have Jared Goff. Jared Goff is definitely a great player, and I'm actually higher on Jared Goff than a lot of people are. It's really between that elevator, great game manager type of thing. And honestly, I might have to put him in elevator, man. He's been great for the Lions so far. And this year, I think the Lions are going to be probably one of the best teams in the NFL. So I'm really excited to see what they have in store for us this year. We're already about 10 minutes into this video, so we should probably go through this a little bit faster. But next up, we have Sam Howell. I think he was decent last year with probably the worst offensive line in the league. So I think he's a starter upside prospect. I mean, honestly, I'm higher on Sam Howell than I know a lot of people are. A lot of people would probably put him in these two tiers, but I actually am decently high on him. I think he's very talented, but the decision-making, the accuracy obviously still have to improve. Of course, he got traded to Seattle a few months ago. I really forgot about that trade, to be honest with you. But he's going to be coming off the bench for Geno Smith. So I guess that constitutes him to be like around here. But I'm still believing in Sam Howell, man. I think he does have starting upside in the NFL. Next up, we have Josh Allen. This goes without saying. Of course, Josh Allen is an elite quarterback. He's been elite for a few years now. It's just the turnovers are obviously the only downside when it comes to Josh Allen. And I guess that does come with the gunslinging ability and the ability to change a whole game just off of one or two plays, which is something that he has. But once the playoff success starts to come for Josh Allen, I think he'll be right up there with Patrick Mahomes. It's just, is he going to be able to beat Patrick Mahomes in the playoffs and get to a Super Bowl to even have a chance to win one? That's the question. But he's definitely elite. Next up, we have the guy that Washington replaced Sam Howell with, of course, Jaden Daniels. I think he's right up there with Anthony Richardson and Caleb Williams. He definitely has high-end starter upside. As long as Washington can put pieces together around him, they will be very solid over the next few years, and Jaden Daniels will also be very good. Next up, we have Joe Burrow. Despite the injuries, despite what all the people have been saying recently, I still think Joe Burrow is an elite quarterback, probably top 3 most accurate quarterback in the league. Doesn't have the greatest arm, of course, but we all know that. Decent mobility, but he's just a great decision maker with a really accurate arm. And as long as he doesn't get hurt, I still think he's an elite quarterback, which is obviously him not getting hurt with that offensive line right now is a lot to ask, but he has great weapons around him. The defense is starting to come together. I think the Bengals are going to be back right where they were a couple years ago, and I think Joe Burrow is going to be a big reason for that, as he is an elite quarterback. Next up, we have Justin Herbert. I think Justin Herbert right now is definitely an elevator, and he's close to being elite. I feel like it really isn't even his fault. It's just the team that he has around them. It really isn't even his fault. It's just the team that he has around him. He obviously is more inconsistent than a guy like Joe Burrow, even Josh Allen, who's pretty inconsistent. Justin Herbert is arguably even more inconsistent, and it's really not his fault. Injuries with that team have been terrible for the last few years, but Justin Herbert is really just the only consistent staple of that offense over the years. I did just say that he was inconsistent through games, but that's not really his fault. He's still a very good quarterback, and I still think he has the potential to be in the elite category. And out of the 3 guys in the elevator tier, I think he's easily the main candidate that could go up to the elite tier. And quick pause from moving forward. We're about halfway done, and looking at what we have so far, I feel like my list is pretty decent. The great game manager and elevator tier is what I'm looking at right now, and I'm really trying to think about whether Jared Goff should drop down one or if he really is an elevator. The running game around him has been incredible. They run the ball amazingly well. There's not a lot you have to ask for from Jared Goff. It's just make good decisions. I feel like he's just a better version of Brock Purdy because he's just more talented. His arm is better. Of course, there was a reason he was a top pick in the draft just a few years ago. And now, of course, the Lions aren't asking him to do much. My question is, if he was on a team like the Bills, they ask a lot out of Josh Allen, or even like the Bengals. These teams ask a lot out of their quarterbacks. I don't know if Jared Goff would be good in that situation. But I guess we're going to have to take it for what's in front of us. And in his situation, I guess you could consider him an elevator, but I don't think he's at the level of Justin Herbert or Aaron Rodgers. So I'm actually going to drop him to the high end of this category right here, great game managers. So right now, this is my list. Josh Allen at the top of elite, then Joe Burrow, and then I'm actually moved Justin Herbert up a little bit. I'm going to move Dak Prescott up as well, above Baker Mayfield right there. Okay, that looks better to me. Anyways, moving forward, next we have Geno Smith. Geno Smith has been the starter for the Seahawks for a couple years now, but at this point I do think he is a bridge starter. This doesn't necessarily mean he's bad. Obviously, he's better than Derek Carr. In terms of just overall how good he is as a quarterback, he's up there with Brock Purdy. He's arguably better than Baker Mayfield. He's up there with Jared Goff, in my opinion, honestly. But right now, he is a bridge starter. He's not going to be there for too much longer. He's obviously old. The Seahawks probably have to look to move on. There's been buzz for the last couple years about them drafting a quarterback to replace Geno Smith. As I mentioned earlier, right now it's just Sam Howell behind him. So we'll have to see what the Seahawks do moving forward. But right now, Geno Smith is a bridge starter, and it's unfortunate because he is really talented, but he's just getting old right now. Next up, we have Justin Fields, who's in a really, really, really weird position right now. His journey in Chicago was really, really strange. People were really blaming him earlier for his lack of arm talent and just overall decision-making. And then people started realizing that it was really just the Chicago Bears being a terrible team. And that's when the Bears came back to having a good end of the season last year. But of course, they had the first overall pick in the draft. And they were looking to move on from Justin Fields. So they went ahead and picked Caleb Williams. And then at that point, Justin Fields was basically forced out and went to Pittsburgh, which should have been an opportunity for him to be the starting quarterback of a young team. But instead, they got Russell Wilson. They're probably going to make it somewhat of a battle between them and make it look like that. But I'm sure Russell Wilson's going to get the job. And now Justin Fields is in a really weird position because it looked like he was on the rise, and now he's just a backup in the league. So it's really weird to put Justin Fields in any of these categories right now. I still think he has starter upside, though, so I'm going to go ahead and throw him there. I might actually change this rookies tier because I'm not going to put anybody here. I'm going to try to project every player that is a rookie. I might just put unknown right here because Justin Fields might just go in this category for right now. He might be the perfect player to put here because we know he can be decent, but we don't know what team wants him and where he can actually do anything. So it's just an unfortunate situation for Justin Fields. Really, really unlucky. But you never know. Maybe he will win the starting job over Russell Wilson somehow, but I highly doubt it. Next up is Jalen Hurts, who is also in a really interesting position. Of course, he's still in control of that starting spot for the Eagles. Looks like a franchise quarterback. But the end to last year was really not that good at all. And they ended up flaming out in the playoffs, just as a lot of people expected, after those tough losses to end the season. So, Jalen Hurts is in a really weird spot. Of course, the team, just the whole organization was in a really, really weird spot at the end of the year. And I think some of that is to blame on Jalen Hurts. They took some really, really ugly losses at the end of the year. And I think Jalen Hurts just didn't play well in a few games. It looked like he was the front runner to win MVP, and then he just had a collapse. So this is really interesting because it's honestly a pretty big debate right now of whether or not Jalen Hurts is an actual elevator elite quarterback or if he's just a game manager. And honestly, Jalen Hurts is one of those guys similar to Jared Goff. The team doesn't ask a whole lot out of him. At least early in the year, the system was really, really good. It was just run the ball off of play action, let Jalen Hurts use his legs. Next year is going to be a real test for the Eagles because they got worse at a few positions, such as offensive line, obviously Jason Kelce retiring. But, it's going to be a real test for him. So right now, I might honestly have to put Jalen Hurts in unknown. But that's also really weird considering we've seen him start for like 2 years now. So we should know what he is. For right now, I'm just going to put him at the very top of great game manager. I'm not sure if I can go and put him in elevator just because of that sample size at the end of last year. Obviously, the team wasn't very good. But I don't know, man. That was a really scary stretch for Jalen Hurts just because he was not good at all. Next up is Jordan Love. And I'm honestly sold that Jordan Love is going to be very, very good. But we still got to hold back. I can't put him in elevator yet, even though he was very, very good last year. I'm going to have to put him in high-end starter upside prospect. I'll put him above Caleb Williams, just below Anthony Richardson. I think Anthony Richardson's ceiling is higher than Jordan Love's, but Jordan Love has played better so far, even though Anthony Richardson's barely played any games. But yeah, I'm going to put Jordan Love handily in that same tier with Caleb Williams and Anthony Richardson and Jaden Daniels. Next up is Kirk Cousins. Now, he's on the Falcons now. He's also in a strange spot just because we know he's very good. But he's a bridge starter, and there's probably not many years left in Kirk Cousins. He's in a situation where it doesn't look like they're going to be able to win games, even though Kirk Cousins could easily be just like a similar guy to like Brock Purdy or Jared Goff if he was put in the right position to win. But he sadly just never had that opportunity. He's not going to have it with Atlanta. He got paid, though, so it's really hard to feel sad for him, but I feel like he could be in a lot better position right now if he wanted to win. Next up is Kyler Murray, and I honestly, I'm going to have to put Kyler Murray right with Justin Fields in the unknown category. Very similar type of players. Kyler Murray just hasn't played a lot for the last year and a half. He was decent when he came back from injury. Obviously took a little bit for him to come back from the ACL tear. He was okay. He was decent. He won them a couple games. But I really don't know where to put him. I can't say he's a game manager because he has a level to get to where he can still be an elevator, but the injuries are really catching up to him. For right now, I'm just going to have to put him in unknown. Kenny Pickett was supposed to be the hometown hero in Pittsburgh after Ben Roethlisberger, but he was just never really good in Pittsburgh. He had a couple flashes of being a good decision maker and having a decent arm, but now he's in Philadelphia, and he is quite literally a backup. That's what he is. That's what he's going to be. He could potentially be a low-end starter, so maybe I got to throw him up here. Actually, yeah, I'm going to throw him with Daniel Jones, even though I think Daniel Jones is better. Actually, no. Kenny Pickett. No, I don't think Kenny Pickett is that good. Why am I lying to myself? I'm going to have to just leave him in backup. Next up, the next two quarterbacks, Lamar Jackson and Patrick Mahomes. This is very easy. Of course, they have to go into the elite category. In terms of ranking these four that are in elite right now, I would probably go something like this, just because I know Lamar Jackson's more consistent than Josh Allen, even though Allen has a much better arm. Lamar Jackson's more consistent, doesn't turn the ball over as much. So it is really hard to rank those top 4, but I think this is the right way to go about it. Next up is Mac Jones. He is a backup. He's been really bad the last few years. He's had a few games where it's like, damn, Mac Jones is good. 300 yards, 3 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, 24 for 26 throwing the ball. But there's other games where it's like, come on, Mac. So that handily puts Mac Jones in the backup tier. Next up is Mac Jones' replacement, Drake May. He definitely goes alongside Jaden Daniels, Caleb Williams. He goes handily in that tier as a high-end starter. He arguably has just as much arm talent and is just as talented as Caleb Williams. Honestly, in any other draft class that didn't have Caleb Williams, I think Jaden Daniels or Drake May could have easily went number 1 overall, but those two are obviously very good as well. All 3 of these rookies have very, very high potential. Next up, Gardner Minshew. It feels like every year Gardner Minshew starts a few games. In one of those games, he has 300 yards and 4 touchdowns. And this year that happened with the Colts. He played more than a few games last year, but he was very solid. A lot of people for a few years now have called him the best backup quarterback in the league. And honestly, right now, I think he's probably better than Daniel Jones. But you can't call him a prospect. You can't call him a starter upside prospect just because you don't know too much about him. So unfortunately, as much as I hate to say it, I think he's easily a top 20 to 25 quarterback in the league. I'm going to have to put him right next to Daniel Jones. I might drop Daniel Jones to the backup tier just so Gardner Minshew can have that tier alone because I don't think it's even close. I think Gardner Minshew is definitely better than Daniel Jones. So I'm going to put Gardner Minshew in the tier of his own as a high-end backup. Next up, Michael Penix. Now, this is the one quarterback from this draft that I'm not super high on. I mean, I feel like he could be. He has upside for sure. We're just going to drop him 1 tier below. I feel like he's just the oldest quarterback in the class. He has a good arm. He's just old, man. And he's old and not starting right away. Those two things just do not go well together. So we're going to drop him a tier below. I think he's talented. I think he's arguably he was just as good as Drake May and Jaden Daniels in college, but I'm going to have to drop him a tier. It's unfortunate. It's not his fault he's old, but it's true. Next up, we have Russell Wilson. I don't even know where to go with Russ. If he's in a good system, if the Bears can actually do something this year, I think he could be decent. I don't have anybody in the game manager tier, which is really weird. Every game manager, I've called them a great game manager, so that's really awkward. I think Russell Wilson might have to just be in the game manager tier for right now. I don't know, man. I can't put him in unknown just because we know what Russell Wilson is at this point of his career. It's just unknown because he's going to a new team, but I'm going to have to put him in game manager. Next up, Matthew Stafford, easily an elevator at this point in his career. He is probably better than Aaron Rodgers, probably better than Justin Herbert, to be honest with you, at this point. So I think he's definitely a top. Let's see, who else do we even have for last? Yeah, he's a top 5 quarterback in the league, arguably top 6, based on where we put this man right here, C.J. Stroud. So let's talk about him as well. It's only been 1 year, which is why I'm hesitant to put him in elite. This year, the team is going to be even better if C.J. Stroud just matches what he does last year. If he did 95% of what he did last year this year, I could definitely throw him in elite. But for right now, I'm going to put him right next to Matthew Stafford in elevator. I think he's the 6th best quarterback in the league, just behind Matthew Stafford. And it's honestly really cool seeing Matthew Stafford be this good right now because those top 4 quarterbacks are really, really young and still have a lot of time left. Matthew Stafford is up there in age. He's very, very good as well. But I do think those top 4 are in a tier of their own. There's only 5 guys left. Next up is Trevor Lawrence. I think him and the next guy, Tua Tagovailoa, are in very similar situations. I do think Tua is a bit better. Trevor Lawrence right now, I'm just going to have to put him in game manager. He makes plays every now and then. Jaguars always start the year off good, and then it looks like they kind of settle down because teams start to figure them out. They run the ball a lot, very simple offense. The offensive plays they got, the throws that they have Trevor Lawrence make aren't very difficult, except for the occasional deep shot, which he happens to hit a few times. Nothing crazy. I would have to put him in game manager. And then we got Tua. In the playoffs, his game just does not translate. The Dolphins overall, they are a regular season team because the way they play just does not translate to the playoffs. And that's true about Tua as well. So I'm going to have to put him in great game manager. And we'll see if we move him up above a few of these guys later. But there's just a few young guys left. Actually, let's get Deshaun Watson out of the way first. Right now, he is unknown. He's obviously came back from... Actually, you know what? I don't think Deshaun Watson's unknown. We know what Deshaun Watson is at this point in his career. He has the potential to be an elevator. Right now, I think he's just a game manager. Honestly, it feels weird not putting him in unknown because I'm still not sure what he's going to be. He can make plays every now and then. He's also inconsistent. I might just honestly should have just made a tier for inconsistent and put him in that tier along with a few other guys. But that goes without saying. I would put Deshaun Watson in the game manager tier. Next up, a couple young guys. This ends the list. Will Levis is still unknown to me. I'm not sure what he can be. Bo Nix. I think Bo Nix is incredible. I think he has high-end starter upside, and I think that's where he goes. But now let's just take a look at who our top 10 to 20 quarterbacks are in the league. Of course, the top 5 we already talked about. Next, CJ Stroud at 6, Justin Herbert at 7, Aaron Rodgers at 8. I think that's fair. The end of this top 10 is really, really interesting because, just to make it clear, by the way, I do think Geno Smith is better than all 3 of these guys. It's just this is the tier that fits him the best, so we're going to have to put him there. We could arguably put him in great game manager, but he is a bridge starter. That perfectly describes him right now. So anyways, the 9th best quarterback in the league being Jalen Hurts. I'm not too mad at it. Honestly, I might move Jared Goff above Jalen Hurts just for right now because the vibes for Jared Goff are much higher than they are for Jalen Hurts. So Jalen Hurts rounds out the top 10. I feel like him and Dak are on similar levels. Honestly, I might be disrespecting Dak. I'm going to move him above Jalen Hurts. Of course, Jalen Hurts actually had playoff success and took his team to the Super Bowl and almost won the Super Bowl, having an incredible performance. That game alone wants me to put him ahead of Dak. But last year, just going based off of that, Dak was better at the end of the season, and I guess that's what we have to go off of. And then at 12 is Baker Mayfield, 13 Brock Purdy, 14 Tua. These 3, I feel like, are interchangeable for me. I might go ahead and stop disrespecting Tua. I'm going to put him above Baker Mayfield. Those first 3 guys in the great game manager tier are definitely a step above the next 3 guys, so that's that. And then it looks like our 15th best quarterback in the league is Russell Wilson, 16 Trevor Lawrence, 17 Deshaun Watson. Oh, Geno Smith is definitely better than Derek Carr as well. I'm not sure why I didn't change that. Derek Carr is probably the worst in that category. And yeah, I mean, the top 15 is set. The rest of this is obviously a bit different. I think Anthony Richardson is arguably better than Kirk Cousins and even Deshaun Watson right now. Jordan Love as well. I think Jordan Love is probably on the same level as Russell Wilson, if not better. So that's that, but I feel like the only consistent part about my tier list is like the very bottom and the very top. But I'm very happy with this, man. Let me know what position you want me to do next. We started with quarterback, of course. Next I might do running back, receiver, whatever y'all want me to do. So hit the like button if you guys enjoyed this type of content. Let me know in the comment section what you want to see from this channel. Of course, we changed the channel name, a bit of a rebrand, trying to get us a fresh start. If you enjoyed this type of video, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel. That's it for me. I'll see you all in the next one.